Welcome, gentle traveler, to Deep Sleep Stories, a place where the day can soften, where thoughts grow quiet, and where the rhythm of story carries you toward rest. I'm Tim, and I'm grateful you've joined me tonight. This evening, we begin a calm journey into one of the timeless myths of Greece, a tale of courage, of destiny, and of the quiet strength that guides us through trials. It is the story of Perseus, the hero who faced monsters, who carried divine gifts, and who discovered that true strength lies not only in battle, but in patience, in trust, and in hope. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Ease your shoulders, let your breath fall gently, and allow your body to rest just as it is. There is no rush, no effort, only calm. Bring your attention softly to your breathing. Notice the rise of the inhale and the gentle fall of the exhale. Let each breath carry you deeper into stillness, as if the day is slowly dissolving, one breath at a time. And now, let us begin. Long ago in the kingdom of Argos, there lived a king named Perseus. He was proud, stern, and troubled by fate. For though he ruled with power, the gods had spoken a prophecy. Perseus would have no son, but his daughter Danae would bear a child who would one day bring about the king's downfall. Fear gripped Perseus's heart. He sought to defy destiny, to silence the prophecy. And so, he locked Danae away in a chamber of bronze, hidden deep within the palace. No man could reach her, no voice could comfort her. She lived in solitude, her days marked by silence and shadow. But the gods cannot be denied. Zeus, king of Olympus, looked upon Danae with compassion. He came to her not as a man, but as a shower of golden light descending softly into her chamber. From this union, a child was conceived, a boy destined for greatness. His name would be Perseus. When Perseus learned of the child, his fear deepened. He could not kill the infant outright, for the gods would punish such cruelty. Instead, he placed Danae and her newborn son into a wooden chest, sealing them away. He cast the chest into the sea, hoping the waves would carry them far from Argos, far from his throne, far from the prophecy. The chest drifted across the waters, rocking gently upon the waves. Danae held her child close, whispering comfort as the sea carried them onward. Days passed, the horizon endless, the stars their only companions. Yet the gods watched, guiding the chest towards safety. At last, the chest came to rest upon the shores of Seriphos, a small island of rugged hills and quiet harbors. There, a fisherman named Dictys discovered it. With kindness in his heart, he opened the chest and found Danae and her child. He welcomed them, offering shelter, food, and care. And so Perseus grew upon the island, nurtured by his mother's love and the kindness of Dictys. He was strong of spirit, gentle of heart, and destined for trials that would shape his name into legend. Tonight, we have only begun. The sea has carried Perseus to safety, but destiny waits beyond the horizon. On the island of Seriphos, Perseus grew into youth beneath the watchful care of his mother Danae and the kindness of Dictys. The boy's spirit was lively, his eyes bright with curiosity, and his hands quick to learn the ways of the sea. He helped Dictys mend nets, carried baskets of fish from the shore, and listened to the old fishermen's tales of distant lands. Though his beginnings had been cast upon the waves, Perseus found warmth in this humble life. Yet the island was ruled not by Dictys, but by his brother, King Polydectes. Polydectes was ambitious, stern, and restless. His gaze often lingered upon Danae, whose beauty had not faded with the years. He desired her, not only for her grace, but for the power her lineage carried. But Danae resisted, her heart devoted to her son and to the quiet life they had built. Polydectes' desire grew into frustration, and frustration into schemes. Perseus, now strong and proud, stood as his mother's protector. He was bold in speech, unwilling to bow before the king's advances. This defiance stirred Polydectes' anger. The king sought a way to rid himself of the youth, to send him upon a task so perilous that he would never return. And so, Polydectes devised a plan. One evening, the king announced a grand feast. He declared that he would wed Hippodamia, a noble woman of the island. To honor the occasion, he demanded that every man of Seriphos bring him a gift, horses, fine treasures, or tokens of wealth. Perseus, young and without riches, stood before the king with empty hands. Polydectes seized the moment, mocking him before the assembly. "You have no gift?" the king sneered. "Then bring me something greater. Bring me the head of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turns men to stone. If you are truly bold, if you are truly your mother's son, prove it." The hall fell silent. The name of Medusa carried dread. She was one of 3 sisters, monstrous beings with serpents for hair and eyes that froze the living into lifeless stone. No man who sought her had ever returned. Yet Perseus, unwilling to be shamed, lifted his voice. "I will bring it," he declared. "I will bring you the head of Medusa." The words hung heavy in the air. Danae's heart trembled, but Perseus's resolve was firm. Polydectes smiled, satisfied that the youth had sealed his fate. The king believed the task impossible, a doom disguised as honor. That night, Perseus lay awake, the stars glimmering above the island. He thought of his mother, of Dictys, of the life he had known. He thought of the challenge before him, of the monster whose gaze could end him in an instant. Fear stirred within him, yet alongside it rose courage, a quiet flame that would not be extinguished. The gods too watched. They had not forgotten the child of Danae, born of Zeus's light. Athena, goddess of wisdom, and Hermes, messenger of the gods, looked upon Perseus with favor. They knew his path would be perilous, but they also knew that destiny had chosen him for greatness. And so, as dawn broke upon Seriphos, Perseus prepared to leave. His journey would carry him far from the island, across seas and lands unknown, into the shadow of monsters and the light of divine aid. The boy who had drifted upon the waves would now step into legend. Perseus rose with the dawn, his heart steady though the weight of his promise pressed upon him. The island stirred with whispers of his vow, for none had dared speak of facing Medusa without trembling. Yet Perseus walked with quiet resolve, his steps carrying him beyond the harbor, toward the cliffs where the sea met the sky. It was there that Athena appeared, her presence calm, yet commanding. She came not in thunder or flame, but in a shimmer of light, her eyes filled with wisdom. She looked upon Perseus with a gaze that pierced through doubt. "You have spoken boldly," she said, her voice like flowing water. "But boldness alone will not carry you. To face the Gorgon, you must walk with guidance, with gifts, and with trust in the gods." Perseus bowed his head, humbled by her presence. Athena extended her hand, and in it gleamed a polished shield, its surface bright as a mirror. "Take this," she told him. "Do not look upon Medusa directly. Let her reflection guide your strike. Only through cunning will you prevail." As Perseus held the shield, another figure appeared, swift, graceful, and radiant. It was Hermes, messenger of the gods, his sandals winged, his smile quick and knowing. "You will need more than courage," Hermes said. "You will need speed and the tools to find what cannot be found." From his side, Hermes drew a curved blade, sharp and gleaming, light yet strong. He placed it in Perseus's hands. "This sword will not fail you, but first you must seek the nymphs who guard the treasures of the gods. They will give you what you need to reach the Gorgon's lair." Perseus listened, his heart stirred by gratitude. He had not expected aid, yet the gods had chosen to guide him. Athena's wisdom, Hermes' swiftness. Together they formed a path toward destiny. But the journey would not be simple. The nymphs were hidden, their dwelling secret, known only to those who could find the grey. 3 sisters who shared a single eye and a single tooth. They alone could reveal the way. Perseus set forth, shield upon his arm, sword at his side, and determination within his heart. He traveled across lands unknown, through valleys where rivers whispered, and over mountains where winds howled. Nights passed beneath the stars, days beneath the sun, each step carrying him farther from Seriphus, farther from the life he had known. At last, he came upon the grey. They were ancient, grey-haired, their bodies frail, yet their voices sharp. They sat together, passing their single eye from hand to hand, each taking her turn to see the world. Perseus watched, waiting for the moment when the eye left one sister's grasp and had not yet reached the other. Swift as Hermes' flight, he seized it. The sisters cried out, blind and helpless. "Give it back," they wailed. "Without it, we are lost." Perseus stood firm. "I will return it," he said, "but only if you tell me where the nymphs dwell. Only if you guide me to the place where their treasures lie." The grey trembled, their voices hissing with anger, yet they knew they had no choice. They spoke of the hidden path, of the secret place where the nymphs guarded the helm of darkness, the winged sandals, and the pouch that could hold even the head of Medusa. Satisfied, Perseus returned the eye, and the sisters clutched it greedily, their sight restored. He turned away, his path now clear, his resolve unbroken. The journey stretched onward, but the gifts of the gods awaited, and with them, Perseus would step closer to the shadow of the Gorgon. Perseus followed the path revealed by the grey, his steps carrying him through valleys where shadows lingered and forests whispered with unseen voices. The air grew cooler as he climbed, the land shifting into a place untouched by mortals. Here, the nymphs dwelled, guardians of treasures gifted by the gods, hidden away from the eyes of men. When Perseus reached their dwelling, he found a grove bathed in silver light. The trees shimmered as though their leaves held fragments of the moon, and the air carried a stillness that spoke of divine presence. The nymphs appeared, graceful and serene, their movements flowing like water. They looked upon Perseus with knowing eyes, for they had awaited him. "You come seeking what only we can give," one spoke softly, "the gifts that will carry you to the Gorgon's lair." Perseus bowed his head, his voice steady. "I seek them not for glory, but because fate has placed this task upon me. Without them, I cannot prevail." The nymphs regarded him with quiet approval. They brought forth 3 treasures, each gleaming with divine power. First, they offered the helm of darkness, a cap that would render Perseus unseen, cloaked from mortal and monster alike. Second, they gave him the winged sandals, light as air, swift enough to carry him across sea and sky. Third, they placed in his hands a pouch of wonder, woven with threads of the gods. able to hold even the severed head of Medusa without harm. Perseus accepted each gift with reverence, feeling their weight and their promise. He placed the helm upon his brow, the sandals upon his feet, and the pouch at his side. With Athena's shield and Hermes' blade, he now carried the full measure of divine aid. The nymphs spoke once more. Beyond this place lies the land of the Gorgons. It is a place of stone, where men have fallen silent, their bodies frozen in eternal stillness. You must walk with care, for Medusa's gaze is death. Trust the shield, trust the gifts, and trust the gods who guide you. Perseus thanked them, his heart filled with gratitude. He turned from the grove, the path ahead heavy with destiny. The sandals lifted him from the earth, carrying him swiftly across the sky. Below, mountains and seas passed in silence, the world unfolding beneath his flight. Days blurred into nights, the horizon stretching endlessly. At last, Perseus descended upon a desolate land where statues stood in eerie stillness. Warriors frozen mid-stride, sailors halted mid-breath, their faces locked in terror. The silence was absolute, broken only by the wind that whispered through the stone figures. Here, the Gorgons dwelled. Two sisters slept within the cavern, their monstrous forms hidden in shadow. But Medusa, cursed and feared, lingered apart. Her hair writhed with serpents, her eyes glimmered with deadly power. She moved with restless hunger, her presence heavy upon the land. Perseus stood at the edge of the cavern, shield upon his arm, sword at his side, helm upon his brow. His breath was steady, his heart resolute. He had come to fulfill his vow, to face the terror that no man dared confront. The moment had arrived. The gifts of the gods had carried him here, but now his courage must guide the strike. Perseus stepped into the cavern, the air heavy with silence. The statues that lined the entrance seemed almost alive, their faces twisted in terror, their bodies frozen mid-motion. Each was a reminder of Medusa's power, each a warning of what awaited within. He tightened his grip upon the sword, lifted the polished shield, and drew a steady breath. The helm of darkness cloaked him, rendering his form unseen. With careful steps, he moved deeper, the light fading as shadows thickened. The serpents upon Medusa's head hissed softly in the distance, their sound echoing against the stone walls. Perseus did not look directly. His eyes remained fixed upon the shield, where her reflection shimmered faintly. Medusa stirred, restless in her lair. Her sisters slept nearby, their monstrous forms hidden in shadow, but Medusa's presence filled the cavern. She prowled among the stone figures, her gaze sweeping across them, her serpents writhing with hunger. She sensed something, though the helm concealed Perseus from her sight. Step by step, Perseus drew closer. His heart pounded, yet his mind remained calm, guided by Athena's wisdom. He raised the shield, angling it to catch her image. In its mirrored surface, he saw her face, terrible yet strangely sorrowful, cursed by the gods to live as a monster. For a moment, compassion stirred within him, but destiny demanded resolve. Medusa turned, her serpents hissing louder, sensing the presence of one who dared approach. Perseus steadied himself, lifted the sword, and with a swift motion, struck. The blade flashed, guided not by direct sight, but by reflection. In an instant, the cavern filled with silence. The serpents fell still. The monstrous cry of Medusa cut short. Her body collapsed, lifeless upon the stone floor. From her severed neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysa, a warrior of golden blade, children born of her blood. destined for their own paths. They rose, shimmering with divine light, and fled into the world beyond. Perseus stood over the fallen Gorgon, his breath heavy, his heart steady. He placed the head carefully into the pouch, its deadly gaze contained within. The task was complete, yet danger remained. The sisters stirred, their cries echoing through the cavern as they discovered Medusa's fate. Their wings beat furiously, their voices shrieked with rage. Perseus did not linger. He placed the helm upon his brow, vanished from sight, and leapt into the air upon the wing sandals. The cavern shook with fury as the sisters searched, but Perseus was gone, carried swiftly across the sky. The land below stretched endlessly, the sea glimmered beneath the sun, and Perseus's heart carried both triumph and weight. He had fulfilled his vow, yet the journey was far from over. The head of Medusa was his burden now, a power both terrible and divine. As he flew, the wind whispered of trials yet to come, of kingdoms in peril, of innocence awaiting rescue, of destiny unfolding beyond the horizon. Perseus's path had only begun. The sandals bore Perseus across the sky, carrying him swiftly over seas and mountains. The pouch at his side held the head of Medusa, its deadly gaze sealed within, yet its weight pressed upon him like a burden of fate. He flew onward, guided not only by the gifts of the gods, but by the quiet flame of resolve that burned within his heart. As the horizon stretched, Perseus came upon the land of Ethiopia. The coast was rugged, the waves crashing against cliffs, and the cries of people echoed from the shore. He descended, unseen beneath the helm, and beheld a sight that stirred both sorrow and urgency. Upon the rocks near the sea, a maiden was chained, her arms bound, her face lifted toward the sky. She stood as a sacrifice to the monster that rose from the depths. Her name was Andromeda, daughter of King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Her beauty was radiant, yet it had brought her peril. For Cassiopeia, proud and vain, had boasted that her daughter surpassed even the Nereids, the sea nymphs beloved of Poseidon. The god of the sea, angered by such arrogance, sent a great beast to ravage the land. To appease him, the people had bound Andromeda to the rocks, offering her as prey. Perseus watched, his heart stirred by compassion. The sea roared, and from its depths the monster rose, vast, scaled, and terrible, its jaws wide, its eyes gleaming with hunger. The people cried out from the shore, their voices filled with despair. Andromeda stood helpless, her fate sealed by her parents' pride. But Perseus would not stand idle. He descended swiftly, the helm concealing him from mortal eyes. He approached the maiden, his voice calm though the waves thundered around them. "Fear not," he said. "I will not let the beast claim you." Andromeda's eyes widened, hope flickering within her sorrow. She hadn't expected rescue, yet here stood a stranger, armed with divine gifts, his presence steady as the tide. The monster surged forward, its body rising from the sea, its roar shaking the cliffs. Perseus lifted the sword of Hermes, its blade gleaming in the light. He soared upon the sandals, striking from above, swift as the wind. The beast lashed out, its tail crashing against the rocks, its jaws snapping with fury. But Perseus moved with speed, unseen beneath the helm, his strikes guided by courage and divine aid. The battle raged, waves crashing, stones shattering, cries echoing across the shore. At last, Perseus drove the blade deep, the monster's roar fading into silence. Its body fell, sinking back into the sea, the waters closing over its form. The people cried out in wonder. Their despair turned to joy. Andromeda, freed from her chains, looked upon Perseus with gratitude that shone brighter than the sun. He had come not only as a hero, but as a savior, his path entwined now with hers. Perseus stood upon the shore, the head of Medusa hidden within the pouch, the sword gleaming at his side. He had faced the sea's fury, rescued the innocent, and carried destiny forward. Yet his journey was not complete, for beyond Ethiopia lay Seriphos, where Polydectes awaited, and where the true weight of his vow would be revealed. The cries of joy echoed across the Ethiopian shore as the people gathered around Perseus and Andromeda. Freed from her chains, she stood beside him, her eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. The sea monster had fallen, its body swallowed by the waves, and the land was spared from further ruin. Yet the shadow of pride still lingered, for the cause of this suffering had been the queen's boast. And the gods did not forget such arrogance. King Cepheus approached, his robes heavy with the weight of sorrow and relief. He bowed before Perseus, acknowledging the hero's deed. "You have saved my daughter," he said, his voice trembling. "You have saved my people. Ask of me what you will, for no gift could equal the life you have restored." Perseus looked upon Andromeda, her beauty radiant, not in vanity, but in quiet strength. He spoke with calm resolve. "I ask only for her hand, that she may walk beside me, not as a prize, but as a companion in the journey that lies ahead." Cepheus hesitated, for though Perseus had saved them, the promise of marriage carried weight. Yet Andromeda herself lifted her voice steady and clear. "I choose him," she said. "He came when all hope was lost. He faced the sea's fury, not for glory, but to save me. I will walk with him." The people rejoiced, their cries rising like the tide. Yet not all hearts were glad. Phineus, a kinsman of Cepheus, had long been promised Andromeda's hand. His pride flared into anger, his voice sharp with accusation. "You steal what is mine," he cried. "She was promised to me, and I will not yield to a stranger who comes with sword and boast." The hall grew tense, the joy of rescue shadowed by conflict. Phineus gathered men to his side, their hands upon spears, their eyes filled with rage. Perseus stood firm, his shield upon his arm, his pouch at his side. He spoke with calm authority. "I do not seek to steal. I seek only what she herself has chosen. But if you would raise arms against me, know that I carry the gifts of the gods, and I will not fall." The clash erupted, spears lifted, voices shouting, the hall filled with chaos. Perseus fought with skill, his blade swift, his shield gleaming, yet the numbers pressed upon him, the fury of Phineus's men threatening to overwhelm. At last, Perseus reached into the pouch, his hand steady, his resolve unbroken. He drew forth the head of Medusa, its gaze still potent, its power undiminished. The hall fell silent as the face of the Gorgon was revealed. In an instant, Phineus and his followers froze. Their bodies turned to stone, their rage locked in eternal stillness. The people gasped, their fear mingled with awe. Perseus returned the head to the pouch, its deadly power hidden once more. Andromeda stood beside him, her hand upon his arm, her eyes filled with trust. The conflict was ended, the path clear. Together, they would leave Ethiopia, their journey carrying them towards Seriphos, where Polydectes awaited and where destiny would demand its final reckoning. The sea stretched wide before Perseus and Andromeda as they departed Ethiopia. The sandals carried them swiftly above the waves, yet the journey was not without trial. The gods had granted aid, but the sea remained vast, its moods shifting with the winds. Clouds gathered, storms rose, and the horizon darkened with thunder. Perseus held Andromeda close, guiding her through the tempest. Lightning split the sky, waves surged upward, and the roar of the storm threatened to tear them from their path. Yet the sandals bore them onward, their divine speed lifting them above the fury. Andromeda's eyes shone with trust, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We will reach your home," she said softly. "The gods have not carried us this far to let us fall." The storm passed, the sea calming into silence. They descended upon an island to rest, its shores quiet, its forests filled with the song of birds. Here, Perseus spoke of Seriphos, of Polydectes' demand, of the vow that had carried him into danger. Andromeda listened, her heart heavy with the knowledge that his journey was not yet complete. She knew that the head of Medusa, though hidden, was a burden that would shape their fate. Days passed as they traveled, each step carrying them closer to Seriphos. Along the way, they encountered villages scarred by hardship, where people spoke of raids and famine. Perseus offered aid where he could, his presence bringing hope. Andromeda, gentle and wise, comforted the weary, her kindness a balm upon their sorrow. Together, they became more than wanderers. They became symbols of strength and compassion. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus dreamed. In his vision, Athena appeared once more, her gaze calm yet firm. "You carry the head of Medusa," she said. "It is a weapon, but also a burden. Use it with care, for its power is not meant for pride. It is meant to restore balance, to protect the innocent, to humble the arrogant." Perseus awoke, her words lingering within him. He looked upon Andromeda, sleeping peacefully beside him, and vowed that he would wield the Gorgon's power only when necessity demanded. At last, the shores of Seriphos appeared upon the horizon. The island lay quiet beneath the sun, its hills familiar, its harbors unchanged. Yet Perseus knew that within the palace, Polydectes awaited, his schemes woven in silence. Danae remained there, steadfast yet weary, her days shadowed by the king's desire. Dictys, loyal and kind, had watched over her, but the burden had grown heavy. Perseus's heart stirred with urgency. He had faced storms, monsters, and trials, but now he must confront the man who had sought to shame him, who had threatened his mother's peace. The head of Medusa rested within the pouch, its power sealed, its destiny yet to be revealed. Andromeda placed her hand upon his arm, her voice calm. "You have faced gods and monsters. Now you face a man. But remember, courage is not only in battle. It is in standing firm, in protecting those you love, in choosing justice over pride." Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken. Together, they stepped upon the shores of Seriphos, the final chapter of his vow waiting within the palace walls. The palace of Seriphos loomed before Perseus as he and Andromeda stepped upon the familiar soil. The island seemed unchanged, yet within its halls, tension lingered. Danae remained under Polydectes' watch, her days shadowed by his relentless pursuit. Dictys, loyal and steadfast, had done what he could to shield her, but the king's power weighed heavily upon them both. Word of Perseus's return spread quickly. The people whispered of his journey, of the impossible task he had vowed to complete. Some doubted, believing he had failed and returned in shame. Others hoped, their hearts stirred by the thought that the gods had guided him. Polydectes summoned the court, his voice sharp with command. The hall filled with nobles and warriors, their eyes fixed upon Perseus as he entered. Andromeda walked beside him, her presence radiant, her gaze steady. Danae's eyes shone with relief. Her heart lifted at the sight of her son. The king rose, his expression cold. "You return," he said, his tone mocking. "But where is your gift? Where is the head of Medusa, the prize you boasted you would bring?" Perseus stood firm, his shield upon his arm, the pouch at his side. His voice carried calm authority. "I have faced the Gorgon. I have fulfilled the vow you demanded. The head of Medusa rests within this pouch, its power contained, its gaze still deadly." The hall stirred with disbelief. Polydectes laughed, his voice echoing. "You speak boldly, but words are wind. Show us proof, if you dare. Reveal the prize you claim to hold." Perseus's gaze swept across the hall. He saw the arrogance upon the king's face, the greed upon the nobles, the cruelty that had shadowed his mother's days. He knew Athena's warning, that the head was a weapon, not for pride, but for justice. And so, he chose. He reached into the pouch, his hand steady, his resolve unbroken. He drew forth the head of Medusa, its serpent still writhing, its gaze alive with deadly power. The hall fell silent, the air heavy with dread. Polydectes and his followers looked upon it, their laughter fading into terror. In an instant, their bodies stiffened, their voices silenced, their forms turned to stone. The king's arrogance was ended, his reign shattered, his cruelty locked in eternal stillness. The people gasped, their fear mingled with awe. Perseus returned the head to the pouch, its power hidden once more. He turned to Danae, his voice gentle. "You are free. The king will trouble you no longer." Dictys stepped forward, his loyalty unwavering. The people looked to him, their voices rising in agreement. He was chosen as ruler, his kindness and wisdom guiding Seriphus into peace. Andromeda stood beside Perseus, her hand upon his arm, her eyes filled with trust. Together they had faced storms, monsters, and kings. Together they would walk the path that destiny unfolded. The hall, once filled with arrogance, now stood in silence, its stone figures a reminder of pride's downfall. Perseus had fulfilled his vow, not for glory, but for justice, for love, and for the peace of those he cherished. The halls of Seriphos had fallen silent, their stone figures standing as eternal witnesses to the downfall of Polydectes. Yet Perseus knew his journey did not end with justice delivered upon the island. The gifts of the gods still rested in his care, and the head of Medusa remained a burden too great to keep. He resolved to travel onward, to return the treasures to those who had granted them, and to seek a place where the Gorgon's power could be laid to rest. Andromeda walked beside him, her presence steady, her voice a source of calm. Together they departed Seriphos, leaving Danae in peace and Dictys in rule. The people rejoiced, their island freed from tyranny, their future entrusted to kindness. Perseus carried with him not only the pouch, but also the weight of legend, for his deeds had begun to spread across the lands. Their voyage led them first to the temple of Athena. The goddess appeared once more, her gaze serene, her presence commanding. Perseus bowed, offering her the polished shield she had bestowed. "Your wisdom guided me," he said. "Without your gift, I could not have prevailed." Athena accepted the shield, her voice calm. "You have used it with care, not for pride, but for justice. That is the mark of true strength." From there, Perseus sought Hermes, swift messenger of the gods. He returned the curved blade, its edge still gleaming from battle. "Your gift carried me through trials," Perseus said. "Its swiftness was my salvation." Hermes smiled, his eyes bright. "You have proven yourself not only brave but clever. The gods favor those who walk with both courage and wisdom." Yet the head of Medusa remained. Perseus knew it could not remain in mortal hands. He journeyed to the land of the gods, where Athena guided him to her temple. There, he placed the head upon her altar. The goddess accepted it, her voice firm. Its power will serve as a warning, a reminder of the balance between pride and humility. Here it shall rest, no longer a burden upon you. With the Gorgon's head laid to rest, Perseus felt a weight lift from his spirit. He had fulfilled his vow, carried the burden, and placed it where it belonged. His journey had brought him through storms, monsters, and kings, yet now he stood free, his path open to new horizons. Andromeda remained at his side, her presence a constant light. Together they traveled across lands, their names spoken in awe, their deeds remembered in song. Perseus had become more than a hero. He had become a symbol of resilience, of justice, of the quiet strength that carries one through trials. Yet destiny was not finished with him. The gods had chosen him, and the threads of fate still wove his path. Beyond the horizon lay new challenges, new choices, and new lessons. Perseus's story was far from complete. The journey carried Perseus and Andromeda toward Argos, the land where his story had first begun, though he had never known it as home. Perseus, the king who had cast Danae and her infant son into the sea, still ruled there, his heart shadowed by fear of the prophecy that foretold his downfall. Perseus did not yet know how fate would unfold, but the threads of destiny were drawing him closer. As they traveled, the people of distant towns gathered to see them. Word of Perseus's deeds had spread: the slaying of Medusa, the rescue of Andromeda, the justice delivered upon Seriphos. Songs were sung, stories whispered, and the name of Perseus carried across the lands. Yet he walked humbly, his steps steady, his voice calm. He did not seek glory, only the fulfillment of destiny and the peace of those he loved. When they reached Argos, the city stirred with unease. Acrisius had long feared the prophecy, and the sight of Perseus filled him with dread. He saw not only a hero, but the child he had tried to cast away, now grown into strength and legend. Acrisius sought to flee, his heart consumed by terror. But fate is not so easily escaped. The people gathered for games, contests of strength and skill, where athletes hurled discs and raced across the field. Perseus, invited to join, lifted a disc with ease. His arm was strong, his aim true, and he cast it farther than any man before him. Yet destiny guided his path. The disc flew wide, striking Acrisius where he stood among the crowd. The king fell. His life ended not by malice, but by chance, and the prophecy was fulfilled. The people gasped, their voices rising in shock. Perseus stood in silence, his heart heavy. He hadn't sought his grandfather's death, yet fate had woven it into his path. He bowed his head, acknowledging the weight of destiny, the truth that no man can escape what the gods have spoken. With Acrisius gone, the throne of Argos lay empty. Perseus did not claim it, for his heart sought no crown. Instead, he journeyed onward, choosing Tiryns as his dwelling, where he built a kingdom with Andromeda at his side. Together, they ruled with wisdom and kindness, their reign marked not by arrogance, but by justice. Their children grew strong, their names carried into future tales. Perseus's deeds became legend, his story told across generations. Yet within him remained the quiet truth that strength is not only in battle, but in compassion, in humility, in the courage to face destiny without pride. The gods watched, their favor lingering upon him. Athena's wisdom, Hermes' swiftness, Zeus's light, all had guided his path. Perseus had walked through storms and shadows, faced monsters and kings, and emerged not only as a hero, but as a man who carried justice in his heart. And so, the prophecy was fulfilled, the burden lifted, the journey complete. Yet the story of Perseus did not end with Argos. His legacy would ripple outward, shaping lands, guiding kings, and reminding all who heard his tale that destiny, though heavy, can be carried with grace. Life in Tiryns unfolded with a rhythm far different from the storms and battles Perseus had faced. The city, newly entrusted to his care, looked to him not as a warrior, but as a ruler. Andromeda stood beside him, her wisdom guiding decisions, her compassion softening judgments. Together, they sought to build a kingdom marked not by fear or pride, but by fairness and peace. The challenges of kingship were subtle, yet demanding. No monster rose from the sea, no Gorgon lurked in shadow. Yet disputes among farmers, quarrels over land, and the hunger of the poor required steady hands. Perseus listened to his people, his voice calm, his judgments measured. He remembered Athena's words, that true strength lay not in pride, but in justice, and he carried them into every choice. Andromeda's presence brought harmony to the court. She spoke gently to those who came with grievances, reminding them that kindness could heal where anger divided. Her counsel balanced Perseus's resolve, and together they became a pair whose reign was remembered not for conquest, but for compassion. Yet even in peace, trials arose. Neighboring lands looked upon Tiryns with envy, whispering of Perseus's power, of the treasures he had once carried. Envoys arrived, some seeking alliance, others testing his resolve. Perseus welcomed them with courtesy, yet he stood firm against arrogance. He had faced gods and monsters. He would not bow to mortal pride. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus walked the palace halls in silence. He thought of his journey, of Danae's chamber of bronze, of the chest cast upon the sea, of Dictys' kindness, of Medusa's lair, of Andromeda's chains upon the rocks. Each memory carried weight, each step had shaped him. Now, as king, he bore a different burden, the responsibility of guiding lives not through battle, but through wisdom. The people of Tiryns flourished, fields yielded grain, harbors filled with trade, children laughed in the streets. Songs were sung of Perseus's deeds, yet he reminded them that legends were not built upon glory alone. Strength, he told them, is not in the sword, but in the heart that chooses justice. Years passed, and Perseus's reign grew steady. His children grew, their voices carrying laughter through the palace. Andromeda's grace remained constant, her presence a light that guided both family and kingdom. Together, they built not only walls and halls, but trust, a foundation stronger than stone. Yet destiny does not rest. The gods, though silent, still watched. Perseus knew that his story, though peaceful now, would ripple outward, shaping lands beyond Tiryns, guiding kings yet to come, reminding all who heard his tale that courage is not only in battle, but in the choices that shape a life. The palace of Tiryns grew lively as the years passed, filled with the voices of children who carried both the blood of Perseus and Andromeda. Their laughter echoed through the halls, their steps quick upon the stone floors, their curiosity boundless. Perseus watched them with quiet pride, knowing that his legacy was not only in battles fought, but in the lives he now guided. Each child carried a spark of destiny, though in different forms. Some were bold, eager to test their strength in contests of skill. Others were thoughtful, drawn to wisdom and the stories of the past. Andromeda nurtured them with gentleness, teaching compassion and patience, while Perseus taught resilience and courage. Together, they balanced the lessons, shaping their children into souls who would walk with both strength and kindness. Yet raising children was its own trial. Disputes arose among them, rivalries flared, and questions of inheritance lingered. Perseus knew that kingship was not only about ruling subjects, but about guiding family. He spoke to his children of the path he had walked, of the chest upon the sea, of Dictys' kindness, of Medusa's lair, of Andromeda's rescue. He reminded them that destiny is not carried by pride, but by choices made with humility. The people of Tiryns looked upon the royal family with admiration. They saw in Andromeda a queen whose compassion touched all, and in Perseus a king whose justice was steady. Yet they also saw the children growing into youth, their presence a promise of future strength. Songs were sung not only of Perseus's deeds, but of the family he had built, the harmony that filled the palace. One evening, Perseus gathered his children beneath the stars. He spoke of the gods, of Athena's wisdom, of Hermes' swiftness, of Zeus's light. He told them that the gifts of the gods were not only weapons, but lessons, that wisdom must guide courage, that swiftness must serve justice, that strength must bow to humility. His children listened, their eyes wide, their hearts stirred. Andromeda added her voice, reminding them that compassion is as powerful as the sword, that kindness can heal where anger divides, that love is the foundation upon which kingdoms are built. Together, they wove lessons into the night, shaping the hearts of their children with words that would linger long after. The years unfolded, and Perseus saw his children grow into youth, their paths beginning to diverge. Some sought adventure, eager to test themselves beyond Tiryns. Others remained close, devoted to the land and its people. Perseus did not restrain them, for he knew that destiny cannot be bound. He only reminded them to carry justice within, wherever their steps might lead. Thus, the legacy of Perseus began to ripple outward, not only through his deeds, but through the lives of his children. His story was no longer his alone. It was theirs as well, a tapestry woven of courage, compassion, and destiny. The peace of Tiryns was tested when envoys from neighboring kingdoms arrived, their voices carrying both courtesy and hidden ambition. Some sought alliance, offering trade and friendship, while others spoke with veiled threats, their eyes lingering upon the strength of Perseus's rule. Rumors of his deeds had spread far, and with them came envy, for kings who had never faced monsters now feared the power of a man who had slain a Gorgon. Perseus welcomed the envoys with calm dignity. He listened to their words, weighed their intentions, and answered with measured resolve. He knew that war was not always fought with swords. Sometimes it was fought with words, with patience, with wisdom. Andromeda stood beside him, her presence a reminder that compassion could temper firmness, that kindness could disarm pride. One kingdom, rich in grain, sought to bind Tiryns through marriage, offering their princess to one of Perseus's sons. Another, strong in armies, demanded tribute, believing Perseus's reign too young to resist. A third spoke of trade, promising wealth if Tiryns would yield control of its harbors. Each offer carried weight, each demand carried a risk. Perseus gathered his council, speaking openly of the choices before them. Strength is not only in battle, he said. It is in knowing when to yield, when to stand firm, when to walk away. We must choose not for pride, but for the peace of our people. His words carried through the hall, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The council debated, voices rising and falling like waves. Some urged alliance, others warned of betrayal, still others sought compromise. Perseus listened, his mind steady, his heart guided by the lessons of his journey. He remembered Athena's wisdom, Hermes' swiftness, Andromeda's compassion. He knew that true kingship was not in conquest, but in balance. At last, he chose. To the kingdom of grain, he offered friendship without binding marriage, reminding them that alliances must be built upon trust, not chains. To the kingdom of armies, he refused tribute, standing firm in justice, declaring that Tyrians would not bow to threats. To the traders, he opened harbors, but with fair terms, ensuring that wealth would flow without surrendering sovereignty. The envoys departed, some with respect, others with resentment, yet all with recognition that Perseus was no ordinary king. He had faced monsters, but he also faced men with wisdom. His choices carried not only strength, but fairness, and his people saw in him a ruler who guided with justice. Andromeda's voice echoed in the palace. "You have chosen well," she said. "You have shown that courage is not only in the sword, but in the heart that seeks peace." Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken. He knew that trials would continue, that envy would linger, that pride would rise again. But he also knew that wisdom, compassion, and justice would carry him through. Thus, Tyrians remained strong, not through conquest, but through balance. The people flourished, the fields yielded, the harbors thrived. Perseus's reign grew steady, his legacy deepened, his story carried beyond the borders of his land. Within the palace walls, harmony sometimes faltered. Perseus's children, though raised with lessons of justice and compassion, carried the fire of youth. Rivalries grew among them, each eager to prove strength, each longing to carve a path of destiny. The sons tested one another in contests of skill, their voices sharp, their pride rising like waves against the shore. Perseus watched with concern. He knew that rivalry could sharpen courage, but it could also fracture unity. He gathered his children, speaking with calm authority. "Strength is not measured by defeating your brother," he said. "It is measured by protecting him, by standing together when the world presses against you. The gods favor those who walk with unity, not those who let pride divide them." Yet the lessons were not easily learned. One son sought adventure beyond Tiryns, eager to prove himself in distant lands. Another remained close, devoted to the kingdom, his voice steady in counsel. Their paths diverged, their choices shaped by different desires. Perseus did not restrain them, for he knew destiny cannot be bound. He only reminded them to carry justice within, wherever they walked. Andromeda's voice tempered the disputes. She spoke gently, reminding her children that compassion must guide ambition, that kindness must temper pride. Her presence softened anger, her wisdom balanced the fire of youth. Together, she and Perseus wove lessons into their children's hearts, though the threads sometimes tangled. The people of Tiryns watched, their eyes upon the royal family. They saw the children grow, their rivalries shaping them, their choices carrying weight. Some whispered of future kings, others of warriors who would walk beyond the land. The palace became not only a place of rule, but a place of learning where destiny unfolded in the lives of the young. One evening, Perseus gathered his children beneath the stars once more. He spoke of his own journey, of Medusa's lair, of Andromeda's rescue, of Polydectes' downfall. He reminded them that each trial had carried not only danger but lessons. "You will face your own trials," he said. "They will not be the same as mine, but they will shape you. Walk with courage, but also with humility. Carry justice, and you will not falter." The children listened, their hearts stirred, though pride still lingered. Perseus knew that lessons are not learned in a single night. They are carried, tested, and proven in the choices of life. He watched them with patience, knowing that destiny would guide each in its own way. Thus, the harmony of the palace was tested, yet not broken. Rivalries flared, but wisdom tempered them. The family grew, shaped by both fire and compassion, their paths weaving into the tapestry of Perseus's legacy. Beyond the borders of Tiryns, distant kingdoms began to stir with unease. The name of Perseus carried weight, whispered in courts and marketplaces alike. Some spoke of him as a hero, favored by the gods, others as a threat whose power might overshadow their own. Envoys arrived not with gifts, but with demands, their voices sharp, their eyes filled with suspicion. One kingdom, rich in warriors, sent word that Perseus must yield tribute or face invasion. Another, jealous of Tiryns' growing prosperity, accused him of hoarding wealth and sought to claim his harbors. A third spread rumors, whispering that Perseus's reign was built upon fear, that the stone figures of Seriphos were proof of cruelty rather than justice. Perseus listened, his heart steady. He knew that envy often cloaked itself in accusation, that pride often disguised itself as demand. He gathered his council, speaking openly of the threats. "We cannot answer arrogance with arrogance," he said. "We must walk with wisdom, for strength is not only in the sword, but in the choices that protect peace." Andromeda's voice tempered the council's debate. She reminded them that compassion must guide diplomacy, that alliances built upon trust endure longer than those built upon fear. Her words softened anger. Her presence balanced the fire of warriors eager for battle. Perseus chose a path of firmness without cruelty. To the kingdom that demanded tribute, he sent word that Tiryns would not bow, but neither would it seek war. To the jealous rulers, he opened trade, offering fair exchange without surrendering sovereignty. To those who spread rumors, he invited envoys to witness Tiryns' peace, to see with their own eyes that justice, not fear, guided his reign. The responses varied. Some envoys departed with respect, others with resentment. Yet all recognized that Perseus was no ordinary king. He had faced monsters, but he also faced men with wisdom. His choices carried not only strength but fairness, and his people saw in him a ruler who guided with justice. Yet the threats did not vanish. Armies gathered at distant borders, whispers of war lingered, and pride continued to rise among rival kings. Perseus prepared his people, not with fear, but with resolve. He trained his warriors, strengthened his defenses, and reminded his children that courage must walk hand in hand with humility. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls of Tiryns. He looked across the horizon, knowing that trials would come, that envy would rise again, that pride would seek to test his reign. Yet he also knew that wisdom, compassion, and justice would carry him through. Thus Tiryns remained strong, not through conquest, but through balance. The people flourished, the fields yielded, the harbors thrived. Perseus's reign grew steady, his legacy deepened. His story carried beyond the borders of his land. The peace of Tiryns was shaken not by armies beyond its borders, but by whispers within its own court. Among the nobles who served Perseus, envy began to stir. Some looked upon his reign with admiration, but others, restless and ambitious, saw opportunity in shadows. They whispered of power, of wealth, of the chance to rise higher than their station. One noble, trusted with counsel, began to weave deceit. His words carried courtesy in public, but in secret he sowed doubt, questioning Perseus's choices, whispering that justice was weakness, that compassion was folly. He gathered followers, men whose hearts leaned toward pride, whose voices longed for influence. Perseus sensed the unrest, though no blade had yet been drawn. He listened to the murmurs, his heart steady, his mind cautious. He knew that betrayal often begins not with swords, but with words, not with battle, but with whispers. He gathered his counsel, speaking openly. We must guard not only against enemies beyond our walls, but against pride within them. Justice must remain our guide, for envy can fracture peace more swiftly than war. Andromeda's voice tempered the council's concern. She reminded them that mercy must walk beside justice, that punishment without compassion breeds only fear. Her presence softened anger. Her wisdom balanced the fire of those who sought swift retribution. The noble's plot grew bold. He sought to rally men to his cause, promising wealth, promising power. Yet his deceit was revealed, for truth cannot remain hidden forever. Perseus confronted him, his voice calm yet firm. You have betrayed trust, he said. You have sought to fracture peace, but I will not answer pride with cruelty. You will face judgment, not vengeance. The noble was brought before the people. Perseus spoke openly, his words steady. This man sought to divide us, to place pride above justice. Let his fate remind us that unity is our strength, that envy is our downfall. He did not order death, nor did he cast the man into exile without hope. Instead, he stripped him of rank, placing him among the common people, reminding all that humility is the foundation of strength. The people saw in Perseus not only a king, but a ruler who balanced justice with mercy. They saw that betrayal had been met not with cruelty, but with fairness, that pride had been humbled without destroying life. The court grew steady once more, the whispers silenced, the harmony restored. Perseus knew that betrayal would rise again, for envy is never fully silenced. Yet he also knew that wisdom, compassion, and justice would carry him through. His reign was not built upon fear, but upon trust, upon the balance of strength and humility. Andromeda stood beside him, her presence constant, her voice a reminder that compassion is as powerful as the sword. Together, they guided Tiryns through trials not of monsters, but of men, proving that true kingship is measured not only in battle, but in the choices that protect peace. The call for aid came from distant lands, carried by envoys who had traveled across seas and mountains to reach Tiryns. They spoke of kingdoms threatened by famine, of villages ravaged by raiders, of cities trembling beneath the weight of injustice. Perseus listened, his heart stirred by compassion, his mind steady with resolve. He knew that his strength was not meant to remain within walls alone. It was meant to ripple outward, to bring balance where chaos reigned. Andromeda stood beside him, her voice calm yet firm. You have faced monsters and kings, she said. Now you are called to face suffering not with sword alone, but with wisdom and mercy. Let us walk this path together, for the world beyond Tiryns looks to you not only as a hero but as a guide." Perseus gathered his council, speaking openly of the pleas. "We cannot turn away," he said. "The gods did not grant us peace so that we might hoard it. They granted it so that we might share it, so that justice may spread beyond our borders." His words carried through the hall, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The journey began once more. Perseus and Andromeda traveled across lands, their steps guided by compassion. In one kingdom, they found fields barren, the people starving. Perseus organized aid, sending grain from Tiryns, teaching farmers new methods, reminding them that resilience grows not only from soil, but from unity. In another land, raiders had torn villages apart, their cruelty leaving scars. Perseus trained the people to defend themselves, his sword guiding but his wisdom, teaching that courage must rise from within. Songs spread of their deeds, carried by travelers, whispered in marketplaces, sung in halls. Perseus's name became not only a tale of monsters slain, but of justice restored, of compassion given, of wisdom shared. Andromeda's presence shone beside him, her kindness healing wounds, her voice reminding all that strength without love is hollow. Yet trials continued. In one city, rulers grew corrupt, their greed consuming the people's wealth. Perseus confronted them, his voice calm yet firm. "You rule not for yourselves, but for those who trust you. Justice is not a crown to be worn in pride, it is a burden to be carried with humility." The rulers faltered, their arrogance humbled, their greed silenced. The people rejoiced, their voices rising in gratitude. They saw in Perseus not only a hero, but a king who walked with justice, a man who carried compassion into lands beyond his own. His legend grew, his story spreading across seas, his deeds remembered in song and stone. Yet Perseus remained humble. He knew that destiny was not carried by pride, but by choices made with care. He walked with Andromeda, their steps steady, their voices guiding, their presence a light upon the world. Together, they wove a legacy not only of strength, but of compassion, not only of justice, but of love. The return to Tiryns was marked by peace, yet omens began to stir in the quiet of the land. The gods, though silent, often spoke through signs, and Perseus knew to watch for them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a great eagle circled above the palace, its cry sharp, its wings casting shadows across the courtyard. The people whispered that Zeus himself watched, reminding Perseus that destiny never rests. In the temple, priests spoke of dreams that had visited them, visions of storms rising, of shadows creeping across distant lands, of a hero's name carried upon the wind. Perseus listened, his heart steady, his mind cautious. He knew that omens were not commands but warnings, threads woven into the tapestry of fate. Andromeda too dreamed. She saw a river flowing with light, its waters carrying voices that spoke of journeys yet to come. She told Perseus, her voice calm yet firm, "The gods remind us that peace is not the end of destiny. We must remain vigilant, for trials rise even in silence." Perseus gathered his council, speaking openly of the signs. "We cannot ignore the whispers of the gods," he said. "They do not speak without reason. We must prepare, not with fear but with resolve, for destiny often arrives when least expected." His words carried through the hall, his presence commanding, his voice steady. The people of Tiryns grew watchful. They strengthened their defenses, trained their youth, and offered prayers to the gods. Yet Perseus reminded them that omens are not always of doom. Sometimes they are of guidance, of paths opening, of lessons waiting. He urged them to walk with courage, to carry justice, to trust that the gods guide those who remain humble. One night, as Perseus stood upon the walls, he saw the stars shimmer with unusual brightness. Constellations seemed to shift, their patterns weaving into shapes that spoke of journeys, of battles, of legacies. He felt the weight of destiny upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that his story was far from complete. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. We have walked through storms, through monsters, through kings. Now we walk through omens. Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together. Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus, Tiryns remained in peace, yet watchful. The omens lingered, the signs whispered, the gods watched. Perseus knew that destiny continued to weave its threads, that trials awaited, that his path stretched beyond the horizon. The omens that had stirred in Tiryns began to unfold into events that carried weight beyond the city's walls. Messengers arrived from distant lands, their voices urgent, their faces shadowed by worry. They spoke of kingdoms trembling beneath injustice, of rulers who had grown cruel, of people who cried out for aid. The eagle that had circled above the palace, the dreams of storms and rivers of light, all now seemed to point toward these calls. Perseus listened, his heart steady, his mind cautious. He knew that the gods often wove destiny through mortal voices, that their signs were not idle, but threads guiding him toward new trials. He gathered his counsel, speaking openly. The omens have spoken, and now the world calls. We cannot remain silent, for justice is not meant to rest within walls alone. It must walk across lands. It must rise where cruelty reigns. Andromeda stood beside him, her presence constant, her voice calm. We have faced monsters and kings, she said. Now we face the suffering of people whose voices tremble with fear. Let us walk this path together, for compassion is as powerful as the sword. The journey began once more. Perseus traveled across seas, his sandals carrying him swiftly, his heart guided by resolve. In one land, he found rulers who had grown arrogant, their greed consuming the wealth of the people. Perseus confronted them, his voice firm yet measured. You rule not for yourselves, but for those who trust you. Justice is not a crown to be worn in pride. It is a burden to be carried with humility. The rulers faltered, their arrogance humbled, their greed silenced. In another land, warlords had risen, their armies tearing villages apart, their cruelty leaving scars upon the people. Perseus stood against them, his sword gleaming, his shield steady. He fought not for conquest, but for protection, reminding all that strength must serve justice, not pride. The warlords fell, their power broken, their cruelty ended. Songs spread of his deeds, carried by travelers, whispered in marketplaces, sung in halls. Perseus's name became not only a tale of monsters slain, but of justice restored, of compassion given, of wisdom shared. Andromeda's presence shone beside him, her kindness healing wounds, her voice reminding all that strength without love is hollow. Yet the gods continued to watch. Omens lingered, dreams stirred, signs whispered. Perseus knew that destiny was not yet complete, that trials awaited, that his path stretched beyond the horizon. He walked with humility, his heart steady, his voice calm, his presence a light upon the world. Thus, the omens unfolded, the signs revealed, the gods guided. Perseus's story grew, His legacy deepened, his name carried across lands. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, and omens, and now he faced the suffering of people, proving that true strength lies not only in battle, but in compassion, in justice, in humility. The omens that had guided Perseus across distant lands now followed him back to Tiryns, where peace seemed steady, yet destiny whispered in silence. One night, as he slept, visions stirred within his dreams. He saw a great tree rising from the earth, its branches stretching across the sky, its roots deep within the soil. Upon its branches sat figures, his children, his people, generations yet unborn. The tree shimmered with light, yet shadows lingered at its edges, reminding him that legacy is both gift and burden. Perseus awoke, his heart heavy with the weight of the vision. He spoke to Andromeda, his voice calm yet troubled. The gods remind me that my story is not mine alone. It is a path that shapes those who come after, a legacy that must be carried with care. Andromeda listened, her presence steady, her voice gentle. You have walked through storms and shadows. Now you must teach your children to walk through theirs. Legacy is not in deeds alone, but in the lessons passed from heart to heart. He gathered his children, speaking openly of the vision. The gods show me a tree, its branches filled with lives yet to come. Each of you is part of that tree. Each of you carries its strength. But remember, roots must be deep, branches must be steady. Pride will break them, but humility will make them strong. His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The children listened, their hearts stirred, though some still carried the fire of rivalry, others the quiet of wisdom. Perseus knew that legacy is not shaped in a single moment, but in the choices of a lifetime. He watched them with patience, guiding them with lessons, reminding them that destiny is not only in battles, but in compassion, in justice, in humility. The people of Tiryns too looked upon Perseus's reign as a legacy. They saw fields flourishing, harbors thriving, families growing in peace. They sang songs not only of monsters slain, but of justice given, of compassion shared, of wisdom carried. His story became theirs, his legacy woven into the fabric of the land. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls once more. He looked across the horizon, knowing that his story stretched beyond his own life, that generations yet to come would walk paths shaped by his choices. He felt the weight of destiny upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. We have built not only walls and halls, but trust, not only songs, but lessons. Our children will carry them, our people will remember them, our legacy will ripple outward. Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus, the visions of legacy unfolded, the omens revealed, the gods reminded. Perseus's story grew, his name carried across lands, his legacy deepened. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that destiny is not only in the present, but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The vision of the great tree lingered in Perseus's mind, and soon its meaning began to unfold in the palace itself. His children, now grown into youth and adulthood, carried ambitions that stretched beyond the walls of Tiryns. Some sought to inherit the throne, others longed for adventure, and still others dreamed of shaping their own lands. The question of succession rose like a tide, pressing upon Perseus with the weight of destiny. Whispers filled the court. Nobles debated which son should rule, which daughter should be wed into alliances, which path would secure the future of tyrants. Rivalries among the children sharpened, their voices rising in contests of pride. Perseus watched with patience, his heart heavy, his mind steady. He knew that succession was not only about crowns, but about legacy, about the lessons carried into the future. He gathered his children, speaking openly. "The throne is not a prize to be seized," he said. "It is a burden to be carried. It demands humility, compassion, and justice. Strength alone cannot guide a kingdom. Pride will fracture it, but wisdom will make it flourish." His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. Andromeda added her voice, reminding them that compassion must guide ambition, that kindness must temper pride, that unity must rise above rivalry. Her presence softened anger, her wisdom balanced the fire of youth. Together, they wove lessons into their children's hearts, though the threads sometimes tangled. The council too debated succession. Some urged that the eldest son should inherit, others argued for the wisest, still others for the most loyal. Perseus listened, his mind cautious, his heart guided by the vision of the tree. He knew that legacy is not shaped by birth alone, but by choices, by character, by justice. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus dreamed once more. He saw the tree again, its branches swaying, its roots deep. One branch shone brighter than the rest, not because it was tallest, but because it carried balance, humility, and strength. He awoke, his heart steady, his mind clear. He gathered his children and his council, speaking openly. "The gods remind me that succession is not in pride, but in justice. The throne will pass not to the strongest alone, nor to the eldest alone, but to the one who carries humility, compassion, and wisdom. That is the true measure of kingship." The children listened, their hearts stirred, though rivalry still lingered. Perseus knew that lessons are not learned in a single moment. They are carried, tested, and proven in the choices of life. He watched with patience, guiding with wisdom, reminding them that destiny is not only in battles, but in compassion, in justice, in humility. Thus the question of succession unfolded, the omens revealed, the gods reminded. Perseus's story grew, his legacy deepened, his name carried across lands. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that destiny is not only in the present, but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The palace of Tiryns grew restless as Perseus's children began to walk diverging paths. Some longed to remain within the kingdom, their voices steady in council, their hearts devoted to the land. Others sought adventure beyond the borders, eager to test themselves in distant lands, to carve their own destinies beneath foreign skies. The harmony of family was tested, for unity must bend when ambition stretches outward. Perseus watched with patience, his heart heavy yet steady. He knew that destiny cannot be bound, that each child must walk their own path. Yet he also knew that legacy is not only in deeds, but in lessons carried. He gathered them, speaking openly. "You are branches of the same tree," he said. "Some grow close, some stretch far, but all are rooted in the same soil. Carry justice wherever you walk, for it is the root that binds you." Andromeda's voice tempered the fire of youth. She reminded them that compassion must guide ambition, that kindness must temper pride, that unity must remain even when paths diverge. Her presence softened anger, Her wisdom balanced rivalry. Her love bound them together even as distance grew. Sun departed across the sea, seeking lands where his name was unknown, where he might prove himself without the shadow of Perseus's legend. Another remained close, his voice steady in counsel, his presence a pillar of tyrants. A daughter sought alliances, her wisdom guiding bonds between kingdoms, her presence weaving peace beyond borders. Each path carried weight, each choice shaped destiny. The people of Tyrants watched, their voices rising in song. They saw the children grow, their paths diverging, their choices carrying legacy. They whispered of future kings, of queens who would guide, of warriors who would walk beyond the land. The palace became not only a place of rule, but a place of departure, where destiny unfolded in journeys both near and far. Perseus stood upon the walls, watching the horizon. He felt the weight of legacy upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that his story was not his alone. His children carried it, his people carried it, generations yet to come would carry it. He spoke softly to Andromeda, his voice calm. We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, each in their own way. That is the true measure of legacy. Andromeda nodded, her presence steady, her voice gentle. We cannot bind them, nor should we. Destiny is not a chain, but a river. It flows outward, carrying each life upon its current. We have given them roots, now they must grow their own branches. Thus the harmony of family was tested, yet not broken. Rivalries flared, ambitions stretched, paths diverged, but unity remained. Perseus's legacy grew, not only in his deeds, but in the lives of his children, in the journeys they carried, in the lessons they remembered. Time began to weigh upon Perseus, though his spirit remained steady. The years of storms, battles, and journeys had shaped him, but now the trials of age unfolded quietly within his body. His hair, once dark, carried threads of silver. His hands, once swift, bore the marks of years. Yet his voice remained calm, his presence commanding, his wisdom deepened by the passage of time. The people of Tyrants looked upon him with reverence. They saw not only the hero who had slain Medusa, not only the king who had guided them with justice, but the elder whose wisdom carried peace. Songs were sung of his deeds, yet now they also spoke of his patience, his humility, his guidance. Perseus had become more than a hero. He had become a symbol of legacy. Andromeda too felt the weight of years, though her grace remained constant. Her presence continued to soften anger. Her wisdom continued to balance pride. Her compassion continued to heal wounds. Together, they walked through age as they had walked through storms, side by side, their voices steady, their hearts united. Perseus gathered his children, speaking openly of the transition that lay ahead. I have carried the burden of kingship, he said, but time reminds me that crowns are not eternal. The throne must pass, the legacy must continue, the burden must be carried by new hands. You must prepare, not with rivalry, but with unity, not with pride, but with humility. His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The children listened, their hearts stirred, though ambition still lingered. Some sought the throne, others sought adventure, still others sought peace. Perseus watched with patience, guiding with wisdom, reminding them that succession is not a prize, but a burden, not a crown, but a responsibility. The council too prepared for transition. They spoke of inheritance, of alliances, of the future of Tyrants. Perseus listened, his mind cautious, his heart guided by the vision of the tree. He knew that legacy is not shaped by birth alone, but by choices, by character, by justice. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls once more. He looked across the horizon, knowing that his story stretched beyond his own life, that generations yet to come would walk paths shaped by his choices. He felt the weight of destiny upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. "We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, each in their own way. That is the true measure of legacy." Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus the trials of age unfolded, the transition began, the legacy deepened. Perseus's story grew, his name carried across lands, his presence remembered not only in battle, but in wisdom, not only in youth, but in age. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that destiny is not only in the present, but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The weight of years pressed more firmly upon Perseus, and though his spirit remained unbroken, he began to feel the inevitability of mortality. His steps grew slower, his voice softer, yet his wisdom deepened, carrying the calm of a man who had walked through storms and shadows. The people of Tiryns looked upon him with reverence, not only as a king, but as an elder whose presence guided them with patience and humility. One evening, as Perseus rested within the palace, a dream stirred within him. He saw the river of light once more, its waters flowing endlessly, carrying voices of generations yet to come. At his farthest horizon, a figure stood, radiant, serene, a messenger of the gods. The figure spoke softly. "Even heroes must yield to time. Your journey nears its end, but your legacy will ripple outward, shaping lives beyond your own." Perseus awoke, his heart steady, his mind clear. He spoke to Andromeda, his voice calm yet heavy. "The gods remind me that mortality is not defeat. It is the passage of legacy, the gift of lessons carried forward. My story will not end with silence. It will live in our children, in our people, in the songs that carry my name." Andromeda listened, her presence constant, her voice gentle. "You have walked through storms, through monsters, through kings. Now you walk through time itself. Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together." Perseus gathered his children, speaking openly of mortality. "I will not walk among you forever," he said, "but my story is not mine alone. It is yours as well. Carry justice wherever you walk, for it is the root that binds us. Carry compassion, for it is the light that guides us. Carry humility, for it is the strength that endures." His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The people of Tiryns too prepared for the transition. They offered prayers to the gods, songs of gratitude, voices of reverence. They saw in Perseus not only a king but a symbol of legacy, a man whose story carried justice, compassion, and humility. His presence became not only a memory of battles, but a reminder of wisdom, not only a tale of youth, but a truth of age. One night, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls once more. He looked across the horizon, knowing that his journey neared its end, that mortality awaited, that destiny stretched beyond his own life. He felt the weight of time upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. "We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, our people carry it. Our legacy ripples outward. Mortality does not end your story. It begins theirs. Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus the inevitability of mortality unfolded, the gods reminded. The legacy deepened. Perseus' story grew, his name carried across lands, his presence remembered not only in battle but in wisdom, not only in youth but in age. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that even heroes must yield to time. That destiny is not only in the present but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The gods began to call Perseus toward his final journey, their voices woven into dreams and omens that stirred within the quiet of Tiryns. One night, as he lay in rest, he saw a vision of the river of light once more, its waters flowing endlessly, carrying voices of generations yet unborn. At its farthest horizon, a radiant figure appeared, serene and unyielding, speaking softly. Your mortal path nears its end. The gods await you, not in punishment but in honor. Your legacy will endure beyond the bounds of time. Perseus awoke, his heart steady, his mind clear. He spoke to Andromeda, his voice calm yet heavy. The gods remind me that my journey is nearly complete. Mortality is not defeat. It is the passage of legacy, the gift of lessons carried forward. My story will not end in silence, but will live in our children, in our people, in the songs that carry my name. Andromeda listened, her presence constant, her voice gentle. You have walked through storms, through monsters, through kings. Now you walk through time itself. Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together. He gathered his children, speaking openly of the gods' call. I will not walk among you forever, he said, but my story is not mine alone. It is yours as well. Carry justice wherever you walk, for it is the root that binds us. Carry compassion, for it is the light that guides us. Carry humility, for it is the strength that endures. His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The people of Tiryns too prepared for his departure. They offered prayers to the gods, songs of gratitude, voices of reverence. They saw in Perseus not only a king, but a symbol of legacy, a man whose story carried justice, compassion, and humility. His presence became not only a memory of battles, but a reminder of wisdom, not only a tale of youth, but a truth of age. One evening, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls once more. He looked across the horizon, knowing that his journey neared its end, that mortality awaited, that destiny stretched beyond his own life. He felt the weight of time upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, our people carry it, our legacy ripples outward. Mortality does not end your story, it begins theirs. Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus the gods called, the omens revealed, the legacy deepened. Perseus' story grew, his name carried across lands, his presence remembered not only in battle, but in wisdom, not only in youth, but in age. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that even heroes must yield to time. That destiny is not only in the present, but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The final steps of Perseus' mortal journey began quietly, not with battle or storm, but with the gentle passage of time. His body, once strong and swift, grew weary, though his spirit remained steady. The people of Tiryns looked upon him with reverence, their voices carrying gratitude. their hearts heavy with the knowledge that their king's days among them were drawing to a close. One evening, as Perseus rested within the palace, a vision stirred within him. He saw the river of light once more, its waters flowing endlessly, carrying voices of generations yet unborn. At its farthest horizon, radiant figures appeared: Athena, Hermes, and Zeus, their presence serene, their voices calm. Athena spoke, "You have carried justice with humility. Your journey nears its end, but your legacy will endure." Hermes added, "You have walked swiftly through storms, guiding with wisdom. Now you must walk the final path." Zeus's voice thundered softly, "You are honored, Perseus. The gods await you." Perseus awoke, his heart steady, his mind clear. He spoke to Andromeda, his voice calm yet heavy. "The gods remind me that my journey is nearly complete. Mortality is not defeat. It is the passage of legacy, the gift of lessons carried forward. My story will not end in silence, but will live in our children, in our people, in the songs that carry my name." Andromeda listened, her presence constant, her voice gentle. "You have walked through storms, through monsters, through kings. Now you walk through time itself. Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together." He gathered his children, speaking openly of the gods' call. "I will not walk among you forever," he said, "but my story is not mine alone. It is yours as well. Carry justice wherever you walk, for it is the root that binds us. Carry compassion, for it is the light that guides us. Carry humility, for it is the strength that endures." His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding. The people of Tiryns prepared to honor him. They offered prayers to the gods, songs of gratitude, voices of reverence. They saw in Perseus not only a king, but a symbol of legacy, a man whose story carried justice, compassion, and humility. His presence became not only a memory of battles, but a reminder of wisdom, not only a tale of youth, but a truth of age. One night, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus stood upon the walls once more. He looked across the horizon, knowing that his journey neared its end, that mortality awaited, that destiny stretched beyond his own life. He felt the weight of time upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. Andromeda joined him, her hand upon his arm, her voice soft. "We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, our people carry it, our legacy ripples outward. Mortality does not end your story, it begins theirs." Perseus nodded, his resolve unbroken, his heart steady. Thus, the gods guided, the omens revealed, the legacy deepened. Perseus' story grew, his name carried across lands, his presence remembered not only in battle, but in wisdom, not only in youth, but in age. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and now he faced the truth that even heroes must yield to time, that destiny is not only in the present, but in the future, in the lives yet to come. The final breath of Perseus drew near, though it came not with violence or storm, but with the quiet passage of time. His body, once strong and unyielding, grew frail, yet his spirit remained steady, his voice calm, his wisdom deepened by years. The people of Tiryns gathered in reverence, their hearts heavy, their voices hushed, knowing that their king's mortal journey was ending. One evening, as Perseus lay in rest, the gods appeared within his dreams. Athena stood radiant, her voice serene. "You have carried justice with humility. Your journey is complete, but your legacy will endure." Hermes spoke swiftly. "You have walked through storms, guided with wisdom. Now you must walk the final path. Zeus's voice thundered softly. You are honored, Perseus. The gods await you in the halls of eternity. Perseus awoke, his heart steady, his mind clear. He spoke to Andromeda, his voice gentle. The gods remind me that my time has come. Mortality is not defeat. It is the passage of legacy, the gift of lessons carried forward. My story will not end in silence, but will live in our children, in our people, in the songs that carry my name. Andromeda listened, her presence constant, her voice tender. You have walked through storms, through monsters, through kings. Now you walk through time itself. Whatever lies ahead, I will carry your memory. He gathered his children one last time, speaking openly. I will not walk among you forever, he said. But my story is yours as well. Carry justice wherever you walk, for it is the root that binds us. Carry compassion, for it is the light that guides us. Carry humility, for it is the strength that endures. His words lingered, his voice steady, his presence commanding even in frailty. The people of Tiryns prepared rituals of remembrance. They offered prayers to the gods, songs of gratitude, voices of reverence. They saw in Perseus not only a king, but a symbol of legacy, a man whose story carried justice, compassion, and humility. His presence became not only a memory of battles, but a reminder of wisdom, not only a tale of youth, but a truth of age. On the final night, as the stars shimmered above, Perseus lay in quiet peace. He looked upon Andromeda, his children, his people, his kingdom. He felt the weight of time upon him, not as a burden, but as a reminder that legacy is the true measure of strength. His breath slowed, his eyes closed, his spirit lifted. The gods carried him gently, his mortal journey complete, his eternal story begun. Andromeda wept softly, her hand upon his, her voice whispering, We have built not only a kingdom, but a path. Our children walk it now, our people carry it, our legacy ripples outward. Mortality does not end your story, it begins theirs. Thus Perseus passed, his mortal life ended, his legacy sealed. The gods honored him, the people remembered him, the songs carried his name. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, and mortality, and now he walked into eternity, his story woven into the fabric of time. The passing of Perseus left Tiryns in solemn silence, yet the city did not sink into despair. Instead, the people rose to honor him, shaping rituals that would seal his legacy into memory. The palace became a place of gathering, its halls filled with voices carrying gratitude, its courtyards adorned with offerings to the gods. Priests prepared sacred rites, weaving prayers that spoke of justice, compassion, and humility. The virtues Perseus had carried throughout his life. The people built a great pyre upon the hill overlooking the sea, its flames meant not for destruction, but for remembrance. As the fire rose, songs filled the air, voices carrying tales of Perseus's deeds. They sang of Medusa's lair, of Andromeda's rescue, of the downfall of tyrants, of the wisdom that guided Tiryns. The flames shimmered against the night sky, their light reaching across the land, a beacon of legacy. Andromeda stood among the people, her presence steady, her voice calm. She spoke softly, reminding them that Perseus's story was not only his own, but theirs as well. He walked through storms, through monsters, through kings, she said. Now his story lives in you, in your choices, in your voices, in your lives. Carry justice, carry compassion, carry humility, and his legacy will endure. The children of Perseus too offered tribute. One son spoke of courage, another of wisdom, a daughter of compassion. Each carried a part of his legacy. Each wove their voice into the tapestry of remembrance. They placed offerings upon the pyre, a sword, a shield, a crown, symbols of strength, justice, and kingship. The flames consumed them, transforming them into light, carrying them into eternity. The people of Tiryns built a monument upon the hill, carved from stone, adorned with symbols of Perseus's journey. Upon its walls were etched scenes of his deeds: the slaying of Medusa, the rescue of Andromeda, the guidance of Tiryns. At its center stood a figure of Perseus, not in battle, but in calm, his hand raised in justice, his presence serene. The monument became a place of pilgrimage, a place where generations would come to remember, to honor, to learn. Songs spread across lands, carried by travelers, whispered in marketplaces, sung in halls. Perseus's name became not only a tale of monsters slain, but of justice restored, of compassion given, of wisdom shared. His story lived not only in Tiryns, but in distant kingdoms, his legacy woven into the fabric of time. Thus the rituals of remembrance unfolded, the monument rose, the songs carried. Perseus's story grew, his name honored, his legacy sealed. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, mortality, and now he walked into eternity. His presence remembered not only in battle but in wisdom, not only in youth but in age. The legacy of Perseus did not end with his final breath, nor with the rituals of remembrance in Tiryns. His story rose beyond the mortal realm, carried into eternity by gods and mortals alike. In Olympus, the gods spoke of him with honor. Athena declared that his courage had been tempered by wisdom, that his victories were not only of battle, but of justice. Hermes praised his swiftness, not in flight alone, but in thought, guiding choices with clarity. Zeus himself proclaimed that Perseus had walked the mortal path with humility, proving that true strength lies not in pride, but in compassion. Among mortals, his name became eternal myth. Songs spread across lands, carried by travelers, whispered in marketplaces, sung in halls. They spoke not only of Medusa's lair, of Andromeda's rescue, of tyrants humbled, but of the wisdom that guided Tiryns, of the compassion that healed wounds, of the humility that shaped legacy. His story became more than history. It became a guiding light, a lesson carried through generations. The monument upon the hill overlooking the sea became a place of pilgrimage. Families journeyed to stand before the stone figure of Perseus, carved not in battle, but in calm, his hand raised in justice, his presence serene. They offered prayers, songs, and stories, weaving his legacy into their own lives. Children listened to tales of his deeds, their hearts stirred, their voices carrying his lessons forward. Andromeda too was remembered, her presence honored, her wisdom praised. Songs spoke of her compassion, her voice that tempered pride, her love that bound family and kingdom together. She was not only queen but partner, not only mother but guide. Her legacy woven into Perseus's, her story carried alongside his. Generations yet to come spoke of Perseus not only as a hero, but as a symbol of justice, compassion, and humility. His name became a beacon, his story a path, his legacy a reminder that true strength lies not in conquest, but in wisdom, not in pride, but in love. Thus, Perseus' story became eternal myth, carried through time, remembered by gods and mortals alike. He had faced monsters, kings, betrayal, omens, mortality, and eternity, and his legacy endured, woven into the fabric of time, guiding lives beyond his own.